Welcome to this week's Movie Math, giving you an in-depth analysis of the box office for the weekend of November 9th, where it seems that James Bond's 4-year hiatus left audiences thirst for more 007 as dry as a martini. Therefore, they virtually chugged down Skyfall, as by the end of this weekend, the flick has already pulled in an astounding $500+ million worldwide. About 90 million of that came from the US, which is the biggest opening here for a James Bond movie ever, doubling the debut of Casino Royale. Hell, Skyfall has pretty much matched Casino Royale's and Quantum of Solace's total box office hauls to boot. However, before we totally blow off the past Bonds in favor of Daniel Craig, let's remember that adjusted for inflation, Sean Connery's first two 007 movies grossed between 500 and 600 million, and that's just their domestic numbers. But back to today, this is great news when it comes to diversity in filmmaking, showing that adult franchises can gross on par with family and fanboy franchises. Furthermore, as Christopher Nolan looks to distance himself from the comic book genre after Man of Steel, suddenly there's a hot new Brit director on the block, Sam Mendes. But hey, you tell me, after seeing Skyfall and Mendes, do you now trust? Also grabbing headlines this weekend was Lincoln, where Oscar buzz and a limited release made it another hot ticket. In fact, Lincoln's per-screen average puts it on par with the other impressive debuts of the year, The Master and Moonrise Kingdom, and best of the debuts of both Black Swan and The King's Speech. Numbers like these prove that Lincoln is hot to trot right out of the awards gate, unlike Spielberg's no-go Oscar effort last year, War Horse. Furthermore, this puts Lincoln in an ideal position to go wide this coming weekend as the perfect counter-programming to Twilight. Sounds like we'll have our own Civil War at the movie theaters. While no studio dared to open any film opposite Skyfall, there was still plenty of cash left on the table. Wreck-It Ralph fell just about 30%, while Tangled fell more than 50% in its second weekend. Instead, Ralph is performing similarly to Hotel Transylvania, which is still in the top 10, and Sony just announced Hotel Transylvania 2 for 2015. Is the Wreck-It Ralph sequel far behind? Flight, Argo, and Taken 2 also kept their drops in the 30 percentiles, while Here Comes the Boom fell under 30%. It's still a huge box office flop, but at least it's got heart. Meanwhile, Cloud Atlas continues to drop like a rock, severely undercutting its Oscar chances, as well as those for a Wachowski comeback. It's also worth noting that The Man with the Iron Fist fell almost 70% in just its second weekend, meaning that perhaps Rizzo won't be making any more movies. As for this coming weekend, as I said, it's Twilight time. The final chapter is expected to pull in 140+ million, which would just edge out the biggest opening of the franchise to date, New Moon. And also, as noted, Lincoln will go wide, but just semi-wide with 1,500 theaters. Still, it should be playing near you. Finally, if you live near New York or LA, you'll also be able to check out Silver Linings Playbook and Anna Karenina. And that's the weekend box office. I'm Grace Randolph, and we just did some movie math. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll go beyond the trailer for these other top movies. Today, Movie Math has an after credits scene, and it's my review of Skyfall. I just wanted to give my thoughts on the film because some of you have been asking about it, and I got a chance to finally see it last night. I was reluctant to see it because I have to admit the trailers I had begun to find a little underwhelming, but I was pleasantly surprised seeing this Bond. As for the big question, is it the best Bond I've ever seen? I think Casino Royale is still my favorite Bond, but I would say that Skyfall really delivers what the franchise is all about. It's a very solid entry. It's straight down the plate, and I think that while it's not a film that I would see again in theaters or purchase, it is certainly a film I would recommend to any Bond fan. I feel it's a must-see once in the theaters if you're a Bond fan or just an action fan in general. And it's something that if it was on television, I would certainly watch. It's one of those great, I think it's going to be one of the upper Bond films. But one thing I would like to say, though, is what really struck me about the film while I was watching it that took me out of it a little bit and why I think it's not the best Bond, is that it borrowed heavily from a number of movies. Most prominently, The Dark Knight, Taken 2, even with the beginning, and Home Alone. When they were preparing Skyfall, by the way, this is a little bit of a spoiler review, so just if you haven't seen the movie, it's not huge spoilers, but there's some spoilers. But when they were preparing the Skyfall estate, it was like, this is it, don't get scared now. And it just reminded me a little bit of that. And then, so that was more in a humorous way. But with The Dark Knight, I felt that the villain, even though Javier Bardem did an amazing job, it detracted from the performance and the story a little bit for me that it was so much like The Dark Knight. You had the situation where, you had that he felt that he and the hero were two different sides of the same coin. They had a kinship that elevated them above everyone else. They were playing kind of their own game against each other. There was a camaraderie there, like the conversations between Batman and the Joker. You also have the situation where, he gets himself captured by the police. That's part of his intentional plan, so he can pull an inside job, and then he escapes, also like the Joker. He, even disguised himself as a policeman. That's something that the Joker did in The Dark Knight. So those little similarities, and I feel with that and the similarity between the Avengers and The Dark Knight Rises with the nuclear bomb at the end, I hope that, these movies need to, I think that there are only so many ideas, or big ideas, and so if filmmakers aren't going to push themselves a little bit further, it would behoove all of them to kind of compare notes sometimes and just be careful about that. But maybe, maybe it didn't occur to everybody, but that popped into my head while I was watching it. However, that said, my favorite scenes in the film by far were the Shanghai and Macau scenes. I thought those were textbook Bond. They were beautiful, stunning, visually interesting, really great, very exciting. I loved the thing with James Bond got on that elevator. I thought that made me laugh out loud in the theater. I was so impressed. And I just loved it. I felt some of the other scenes, I thought the opening sequence was the weakest. I would have preferred, I think the Shanghai stuff should have gone first. Because the reason that I didn't love the stuff in the beginning in Istanbul was it reminded me of Taken 2. I was just there like a month ago. And also on a side note, if you watch The Amazing Race, they were in that bazaar that they drive through, also The Amazing Race. So I'm getting to the point where I know Istanbul really well. And also I would like to add that television is getting so good that I think that movies really need to be more theatrical, flex their budgets, to differentiate themselves, because I saw at the beginning of Homeland this season had a great chase scene, really well done, running between buildings and around buildings. So, you have to. It's really difficult, and I feel like Bond needs that artistry. That's its hallmark, and that's why I thought was done so well in the Shanghai and Macau scenes. Really fantastic. But the great thing I also loved about this film was that it was so British. I mean, it was as British as you can get, and I loved it because that's what James Bond is. I think that that gives it a cozy factor. Maybe in America we tend to find British stuff very cozy because that's our roots, and I really loved the way that was done. I loved that. I also liked that it was a mix. The film was very much a mix of the classic and the modern, which I feel is the trademark of British style. Even the way the landscape of the city, the cityscape. You have the classic old buildings that have been around for hundreds of years, even longer, and then you have the very modern buildings that are being built. So, and I thought you saw that in the new MI6 headquarters. And also, what I liked about that is that you could see the roots. Even though I didn't enjoy Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, you could see the roots of that same mentality of British intelligence. And so by seeing these two films together, it's very clear it's the same organization. You can see it growing. I love the new supporting characters they put in. The M, Q, Moneypenny. I think that they're doing a great job setting it up. And when I did the Beyond the Trailer review, some people had said that, one guy in particular said, oh, you can see they're paving the way for more traditional Bond adventures. And I think that's true. I think the origin story is over. I would pull Quantum of Solace out of the mix entirely, and I would see Casino Royale and Skyfall as these two films establishing Bond. And I think clearly, at least that's the impression I'm getting, we're going to start moving into just more straight adventures with Bond. Not to say they won't have the same depth that this one did, but he's going to be having more of the classic scenes that are so famous from the Bond franchise, going to M's office, seeing Moneypenny when he goes in there. That was a nice nod. So, again, love Skyfall, really loved it a lot. I would agree with the 8.5 rating it got on Beyond the Trailer, but I think it's classic Bond. Kudos to everyone involved. And as long as they just try and stay just a tad more original next time, I feel that they will really put it over the top. But great film. I highly recommend you go and see it. If you're on the fence, if you were on the fence like me, take the leap of faith. I think you'll be rewarded. So I hope you enjoyed this surprise review. Thanks for watching. Bye.